In 1971, Idi Amin seized control of Uganda, forcing President Obote to live in exile in Tanzania. During his reign, Amin lost a lot of international support. Relations with the West were broke because of his allegiances with Libya, Palestine and the USSR. However, even relations with the USSR would eventually sour when Amin refused to support the MPLA in Angola. Locally, Kenya didn't like his military build-up and even helped the Israelis during Operation Entebbe in 1976. This was a military operation to free hostages in Uganda from a plane hijacked by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. As for Tanzania, Idi Amin accused President Nyerere of supporting Obote's failed attempt to reclaim power in 1972 and continuing to harbour other political refugees. Domestically, by the late 1970s, the economy in Uganda was poor. It was initially weakened when Amin expelled all Asians and took over British and Indian businesses, but it was made even worse due to a global drop in the price of coffee. So discontent grew and Amin, who had always been a repressive leader, began to kill more and more people. And when Amin, a Muslim himself, began to target Christian churches and kill the Archbishop of Uganda in 1977, he just made the situation worse. His paranoia also led to the murder of high-ranking officials, so the new vice president, Mustafa Idrisi, fled to Tanzania in October 1978 after a suspicious car accident. Unhappy troops and those loyal to Idrisi soon began to mutiny and rebel. Amin tried to crush the uprisings, but they too crossed the border. So, desperately looking to unite his unhappy nation and crush any further threats, Amin sent troops into Tanzania in late October 1978, accusing Nyerere of supporting these rebels. Within days, Amin's troops occupied over 1,800 square kilometers of the Kagera region, a region he hoped to annex. But Nyerere responded by mobilizing an army of around 100,000 men. They linked up with the tens of thousands of Ugandan exiles who formed the Ugandan National Liberation Front, and together they moved west. Outnumbered, Idi Amin's poorly disciplined forces fled back to the border at the beginning of 1979. Nevertheless, Gaddafi still sent arms and a few thousand troops from the Islamic Legion to help his ally. However, they too were unable to stop the advancing Tanzanians. The Tanzanian forces split in two and invaded Uganda. One force marched north, cutting off the west of Uganda from the Congo, while another force aimed northeast to take Masaka. The Tanzanians were slowed down due to the weather and some resistance in Masaka, but the city eventually fell in late February. In March, Idi Amin misinformed his army on the position of the Tanzanians, and this resulted in his troops being caught off guard in Lukaya, around 100 kilometers southeast of Kampala. With his armies devastated in battle, this allowed the Tanzanians to easily capture both Entebbe and Kampala in April. Amin had escaped just before the Tanzanians entered Kampala. He first flew to Libya but eventually went to Saudi Arabia, where he lived out the rest of his life away from politics. Meanwhile, in Uganda, the former President Obote was returned to power and the Tanzanians withdrew once stability seemed established. However, tensions caused by a poor economy and factionalism within the United National Liberation Front erupted after the disputed election of 1980. Museveni and his followers formed the National Resistance Army and fought a civil war against Obote from 1981 to 1986. Museveni emerged victorious in this war, which cost hundreds of thousands of lives, and he remains the president today. But the atrocities committed during the war would spur on further violence from the Lord Resistance Army in the north, led by Joseph Kony.